Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
So those were some of the causes which helped in the successful, which were responsible for the success of the communist revolution in China. Now let us see what happened after the communist revolution. What happened after Mao Zedong declared China as communist China. Okay. Now at the time of the communist revolution, the economic condition of China was very poor. Okay, it had declined to the most deplorable condition. The agricultural and industrial production was also very low. China had become one of the poorest countries in the world. Now, after the end of Chiang Kai-shek's government, and after the establishment of Mao Zedong's government, he was devoted towards reconstruction of the economy of the country. Okay. Now the government, Mao Zedong's government, took measures to bring about land reforms and also to promote agriculture. Okay, the traditional feudal system was abolished. The landlords were removed from their position of power and privilege. Their lands were also confiscated by the government, and it was distributed among millions of cultivators who actually worked in those lands and cultivated crops. The land reforms continued between 1950 to 52. In the next phase, collective farming was introduced. Okay, now the farmers collectively, okay, together worked in the land that they owned. Okay. And they harvested the crop also together, and they shared the produce of the crop amongst themselves. Okay, so everything that they used for cultivation of the crops, like agricultural equipment or livestock, these were all shared among themselves. They were all collectively used by the people in that particular village. Okay. Now, by 1958, the work of this the work of collectivism was completed. Now, after that, the next step taken by the government was to establish people's communes, okay, in the villages and in towns. Now, what were these communes? Communes basically meant that now people could live in the area and they could manage their own economic activities for themselves, okay. So the people were responsible for the kind of economic activities that took place in the area or in the town or in the villages where they lived, all right. Now, apart from these, the government also established heavy industries. Okay, it nationalized banks. It imposed control over foreign industries and also foreign corporations and businesses. Like Soviet Union, China started 5-year plans for the economic reconstruction of the country. Now, Soviet Union continued to provide assistance to China, and it established 141 industrial units. China established 141 industrial units with the help of Soviet Union in the year 1951. In May 1990, the Chinese government fixed 8 hours a day of work for 5 days in a week for all the workers who worked in the industries, who worked in the factories. The communist government, which was established in China in October 1949, it was based on the principle of new democracy. And that meant that it had made an alliance with all the social classes. So all the social classes were equal. Okay, so this was the new principle of new democracy, which led the foundation of the communist government in China. All right. Now, the programs which we already learned about, launched by the communist government in China for its improvement, for the economy's development and growth, that lasted till 1953, when it declared that it would launch a program of socialist transformation. So in 1953, the government announced that now the programs that the government would launch for the improvement and for the development of the nation, that would be the program of socialist transformation. Okay. In 1958, the government launched the Great Leap Forward movement to industrialize the country rapidly. Okay, people now were encouraged to set up steel furnace in the backyards of their houses. Basically, everybody was encouraged to set up factories, whether it be small scale or large scale, it didn't matter. But the government started a program which encouraged everybody to set up factories and industries for the rapid growth and development of industries in China. Now, the land reform movement, which had earlier begun, that continued. Okay. In 1958, there were about 26 communes, the communes which had been set up by the communist government in China, right? Now that covered 98% of the farm population, okay? So people were responsible for the economic activities that took place or that characterized each village or each town's development and improvement. Okay. Now, during this period, as this new changes of transformation were brought into China for its economic development, now there were various visions which were advocated or which were followed by different people. Okay. The supporters of Mao Zedong and his supporters, they wanted to create a socialist country. Okay, they wanted to create the Chinese man as a socialist man. Okay, and all those who did not agree to their view, agree to this opinion of creation of socialist nation or socialist man, every Chinese person as a socialist man. So they were now critiqued by the government. Okay. To deal with objections of the government's opinions and ideologies, Mao Zedong launched the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in 1965. Okay, he brought about a cultural revolution in 1965. The Red Guards, mainly students and the army, were used for campaigning against the old culture, old customs and old habits. Now, as a part of this cultural revolution, the Red Guards, the followers of Mao Zedong, now campaigned to change the old culture, to change the old customs, to give up the old habits followed by or practiced by the Chinese people. Okay. The communist ideology was considered more important than the professional knowledge which were acquired by the Chinese people. Okay, so communist ideology was very important. Now, the Cultural Revolution was set in a period of turmoil. Okay. was set up in a period of instability within the country. So because of this, the Communist Party was affected by such turmoils, and it had led to a weakening of the economy and educational system of China as well. Okay, but from again the late 60s, a new change emerged. In 1975, the party again began to lay emphasis on the greater social discipline of the people and the need to build an industrial economy so that China could become an industrial power before the end of the 20th century. Okay, so the main focus of the government was to develop China, to uplift China as the one of the most industrially powerful nation in the world. Okay. Now, the government also brought about social changes in the society. Not only brought changes in economy, but it also brought changes in society. It gave equal opportunities to all 60 nationalities living within China to develop their respective cultures. Okay, education now was nationalized under the communist government. Okay, now restrictions were placed on the missionaries to interfere in the educational system of the country. The missionaries were kept on check. They could not interfere into the educational system of China. Strong measures were taken for the propagation of Marxist ideologies, okay, the ideologies followed by the leaders of the communist government in China. Okay, and such ideologies and knowledge were also imparted for providing technical education to the students. Okay. But there was a problem with the educational aspect of Mao Zedong's cultural revolution. Okay. Now, Mao Zedong made it compulsory for the educational institutes to read Mao's Red Book, Mao Zedong's book called the Red Book. Okay. Now, this book contained principles of Maoism, and this, if the teachers did not agree to teach in the school to the students, then those teachers were dismissed from the service. Those teachers were punished by the government. All right. Now, after the death of Mao Zedong, the leader of the Communist Party and Republic of China, there were more changes which were brought about in the economy of China. Okay. Now, China was attracted towards capitalism. Okay, and it adopted principles of capitalist economic system. Before Mao Zedong's death, it did not adopt capitalistic elements to be introduced into and apply into its economic system. Okay. Now, the communist leaders established cultural and trade relations with the countries in the West, like United States of America, France, England, etc. As a result of this, now China no longer was closed for the Western countries and Western powers. Now, its door was open for foreign countries to come and have trade and other exchanges. Okay. Now, of course, this open door policy of China and its interaction with Western culture and Western commerce, it had great impact on the culture and also ways of livelihood of the new generation of Chinese society. Okay. Now they no longer wore their blue uniforms. Now they dressed themselves in Western style garments. Okay. Now they enjoyed pop music and they also began to consume cola drinks, which were popular in the West. Okay. In 1992, China introduced some features of capitalist economy, and these features were as follows. First, it increased the production by liberal economic policies. Liberal economic policies were adopted, which increased the production of industries. Okay. The industries were modernized. Number 3, the development of science, education, culture, and research and training centers and institutions were now open, not only for people in China, but also for people outside, foreigners. Okay. Now the government took effective measures for the reform of economic structure of the country. Fifth, it also provided support to globalization of the Chinese economy. Okay, now it developed network with various other countries of the world to have financial, cultural, other political, diplomatic exchanges with them. Okay. Now it also began to receive technical and economical assistance when provided from other foreign countries. Okay, it established trade relations with all the countries of the world. Now China was no longer isolated and closed. It was open and followed liberal economic policies. Now, China's trade with capitalist countries like United States of America, England, France, etc., it had huge impact on Chinese economic development and its society. Okay. Now, China became a member of the World Trade Organizations. Okay. So, all these steps taken by China over a period of time, this was a clear indication that China was now on the road to capitalism. Okay. From socialism to capitalism. Now let us very briefly look at China's relationship with Formosa or Taiwan. We did learn about Formosa a little bit while we were learning about Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong and the Communist Revolution, right? We know how Chiang Kai-shek was forced to flee to Formosa on defeat of the Nationalist Party by the Communist Party. Formosa, which is today called Taiwan, is an island 240 miles long and 60 to 80 miles wide. So it's not a big island, it's a small island. It is located on the eastern coast of Chinese mainland. Okay. For centuries, Formosa had been considered a part of the Chinese Empire. Now, when the Sino-Japanese War took place in 1895, Formosa was taken over by Japan as a colony. So, Formosa became a Japanese colony. At the Cairo Conference Declaration of 1943, the Allies stated that Japan would be stripped of all its possessions in the Pacific area, which included Formosa, and that required to be restored or given back to China. Okay, so basically now, towards the end of the Second World War, Japan had to surrender all its territories that it had captured and taken control of along the Pacific coast. Okay, so it included Formosa, and now Formosa had to be restored to the Chinese territory. Okay. At the end of the Second World War, Formosa was restored to the Republic of China or Nationalist China, which was then ruled by Chiang Kai-shek, who was the leader of the Nationalist Party, okay, or Kuomintang. Now we know that during this time a conflict between the Communist Party and the Nationalist Party led by Chiang Kai-shek developed, and it continued for a long time. Okay. Now by April 1946, this conflict between the two parties developed into a full-scale conflict or fighting. Okay. Now we know that Kuomintang was finally defeated by the Communist Party. Okay. And with its defeat, Kuomintang also lost most of the territories which were under their control before the defeat. Okay, on 21st January 1949, the Communist Party captured Peking with the result of the surrender of Chiang Kai-shek as surrender with the capture of Peking, with Chiang Kai-shek being removed from the position of presidentship of China. Okay, and after that he went to the island of Formosa and created a stronghold of the Nationalist Party there in Formosa. Okay. After the removal of Chiang Kai-shek from mainland China and after Chiang Kai-shek's escape to Formosa, now China was declared as a communist country, or the People's Republic of China, in October 1st, 1949. But Chiang Kai-shek now fled to Formosa along with some of his party members. Okay. Now in Formosa, Chiang Kai-shek established the Nationalist Republic of China. His government began to function there in Formosa in December 1949. The USA, the United States of America, we know, we have already read, it provided support and aid to the Nationalist Party headed by Chiang Kai-shek. So now when Chiang Kai-shek moved to Formosa, the United States of America treated Chiang Kai-shek's exiled regime and his government in Formosa as the legal government of China. Okay, so USA provided support to Chiang Kai-shek's establishment of government in Formosa. Now, USA, along with that, also provided other kinds of support to Chiang Kai-shek in Formosa. It provided military aid, also economic support, and also provided assistance in helping Chiang Kai-shek check the spread of communism or the communist ideology in the far east of Asian continent. Okay. The People's Republic of China, all right, holds that it has the legal right on Formosa, but the Republic in China, okay, the mainland China, believes and it holds the claim over Formosa. Okay, it believes that Formosa is part of mainland China. It considers Formosa as part of the mainland China and is determined and was determined to occupy it and has continued to remain determined to occupy it. Okay. Now, after the death of Chiang Kai-shek in 1975, Taiwan became a democracy. In 1987, martial law was lifted and opposition parties were legally recognized in Formosa. Okay. Now, Taiwan also made remarkable economic policies, economic development. It introduced land reforms, and it also encouraged and supported its agricultural productivity, worked towards the development of its agricultural development. Okay. Now, the economy of Formosa depended largely on trade. Unlike China's economy depended mostly on agriculture. Of course, it had trade also going on, but then agriculture was the most important factor on which the economy depended. But for Formosa, it was trade on which its economy rested. Okay. Now, the question of reoccupation or the question of incorporation of Taiwan with mainland China, it remains a contentious issue even today. Okay, there's a debate regarding it. Some consider it part of mainland China, some consider it independent. Okay, so this debate continues to go on. But the relations between Taiwan and China have been improving. The Taiwanese trade and investment in the mainland China are massive, and travel has also now become easier between China and Taiwan. China may be willing to tolerate a semi-autonomous government in Taiwan as long as it gives up its determination to seek independence. Okay, so Taiwan is seeking independence, trying to become an independent country. Okay, but China may not tolerate that. Okay, because it claims Taiwan to be part of the Chinese Empire. It claims Taiwan to be part of mainland China. So that the demand for independence may not be tolerated by China. Okay. The United States of America concluded a treaty with Chiang Kai-shek and its government in Formosa. Okay, and according to the treaty, the terms were such that if Formosa or Taiwan was attacked by China or any other country, or mainly China, then that would automatically mean that a war would be declared between also United States of America and China. Okay, between 1951 and 55, the United States of America poured in over $500 million, okay, in the form of economic and military aid to Taiwan. So you can see and imagine the huge influence that United States of America has over Taiwan. Okay, it also established powerful military stations there. Okay. And the Taiwanese economy continues to depend on the US aid, or the aid which is provided by United States of America. Okay. Now, in this chapter, we dealt with how two countries in the Far East, they over a period of time developed its respective countries into a modernized nation state, right? So we are dealing with the term modern or modernization of a nation. Okay, now modernization is a theory. Okay, it's a theory used to summarize modern transformations of social life. So basically, modernization means modern transformations of life. Okay, ways of life, different ways of life. Now, its analysis, how we see modernization or how we see modern transformations, that is based, its understanding is based on how countries and societies, they develop or they change from old period to the modern period, how they go through certain stages, okay, how they provide attention towards different spheres of development like economic, polity, or social and cultural changes. Okay, so throughout a certain period of time, modernization theories attempted to identify social variables which contribute to the social progress and development of certain societies and seek to explain the details of social evolution. Not surprisingly, modernization theories are subject to much criticism by the communist and political parties, world system theories, and globalization and dependency theories. Now, for a long time, or mostly when we talk about modernization, it means transformations that are seen or that are witnessed by a society or by a country, okay? And that transformation takes place over a period of time. Okay, say for example, over 2000 years, over 1000 years, over 100 years. And that transformation also takes place in various spheres of life, various aspects of that particular society or country. Say for example, economy, polity, society, culture, etc. Okay. Now, this theory of modernization, of course, has been criticized by various other groups and various other ideologies. Okay. And according to them, according to those groups who do not agree to this simple definition or understanding of modernization, so they point out that modernization does not only mean change, okay, but it also means response to that change. So what we have to remember is modernization is not only transformation of various aspects of a society and country over a period of time, but it also means the response of the people living in that country and society to the changes, the response of the government leading or ruling over the people living in that particular society and a particular country going through those transformations. Okay, so these two are important aspects to be considered when we think about and understand modernization. Okay. So why we are trying to talk about this aspect of modernization is that when we learned about how Japan and China evolved over a period of time as modern nation state, we not only looked at the transformations, we not only looked at the changes that it went through at various period of at various points of that period, of that vast period, but what we also saw was how the people reacted to these changes, whether people agreed to this kind of transformation, whether they were against it, whether they liked it, all right, or how did the government also brought about these changes, what was the role of the government, what was the role of the people. So that is important in understanding modernization or development of modern nation state. Okay, not just Japan and China, any other country in the world. Now, the group of people who criticize this idea of modernization also points out that how modernization also puts emphasis on how the economic and social progress of certain countries work. Okay, like how certain countries try to influence other countries in order to bring modernization, in order to bring changes to modernize its system, its economic system, its political system, its cultural, its society, etc. Okay, but while doing that, it also colonizes, it also imposes certain rules and regulations on that particular country. Okay, so in the name of how the countries get modernized with the help of another country, with the influence of other countries, they also end up making that country dependent, colonizing that country, exploiting that country. So this modernization also allows us to understand exploitation of one country by another, by influence, by power, by trade relations, etc. Okay, exploitation. Dependency, all right. So if a country is dependent on another country, that means that country cannot come out as independent and also exercise independent policies. Okay, so some countries believe that with their support, with their aid, another country can be modernized and westernized. The third world countries, the poorer countries, should take the assistance of the richer country to bring about modernization and westernization. But that also leads to exploitation, that also leads to dependency. All right, so these are some of the important points for us to remember when we try to understand and when we come across terms modernization, or when we understand and we try to discuss this term. Okay. So in this chapter, we looked at two different countries. One was Japan and one was China. And then we looked how these countries, in their own respective ways, they went through different stages in a period of time to evolve, to develop themselves, to emerge as a modern nation state. Okay. So what we saw is that China and Japan, they led divergent paths. They led separate, different paths for building itself as an independent and modern nation state. They did not have similar things that they did or that they introduced to come out as a powerful modern nation state. They had their own events, they had their own problems to deal with, and they paved their own ways to emerge as a modern independent state. Okay. When we looked at Japan, on the path to modernization, Japan was successful in retaining its independence and using traditional skills and practicing new ways. So when we looked at Japan, as it introduced measures to modernize itself, to bring modernization, it retained its independence. It was not dependent on other countries, but as it was not dependent on other countries, it used its own traditional skills. But alongside its own skills, its own traditions, it also used new ways. It was also influenced by new knowledge, new ideas, and it practiced new ways to bring about modernization. Okay. But this modernization, led by its elite, generated an aggressive nationalism, helped to sustain a repressive regime that suppressed the demand for democracy, setting up a colonial empire, and left a legacy of hatred in the region and also distorted internal developments. But this modernization, initially, it was led by elites, the powerful leaders, powerful people who were militant, who were aggressive, and they developed ideology of aggressive nationalism, okay, which helped to turn Japan into a colony, okay, into a colonial empire, which expanded its territories and subjugated other countries and brought under its colonial empire. Okay, so this of course resulted in legacy of hatred in the region. Okay, in the region of Far East. Now, we already know that Japan's modernization and process of modernization was influenced by Western imperialist powers, were influenced by the Western countries. Okay. Now, while it adopted, or while it was influenced by the West, it also made efforts to find its own ways to retain its culture, to retain its traditions. Okay, so it did not just take everything from the West. It retained its own unique culture and traditions. Okay, so Japanese nationalism had its own compulsions. While many Japanese hoped to liberate Asia from Western domination, others justified their ideas by building a Japanese empire. So as a result of this kind of ideas which influenced Japan in transforming itself into a modern nation state, there were many in Japan who believed that Japan should dominate the West and Asia and build an empire, while there were others who felt that Japan should liberate Asia from the Western domination. Japan should become the guardian of the Far East. Okay. Now, the transformation of social and political institutions in Japan was not just about reviving or bringing about the old traditions and preserving them. But what was unique about Japan was that they used their old traditions and techniques in a creative way, in a new and different way. Okay, For example, the Meiji education is a very good example here. The Meiji education was based on Western education, okay, on Western model. Now, as influenced by the Western countries and their education system, they introduced new subjects, but the main object of curriculum was to make loyal citizens and faithful citizens to the Emperor of Japan. Although they introduced Western subjects into the school curriculum, but the school curriculum was made in such a way that the loyalty of the citizens, the faithfulness of the citizens towards its emperor was intact. Okay? Similarly, changes in the family and daily life, everyday life, show how foreign and indigenous ideas were put together to create something new. So the foreign ideas were adopted in the Japanese culture and society, but not to imitate how the foreigners use them, but to use it in a way that they create a new way of bringing about change, of improving the life and culture and society of the Japanese nation. Okay. Now in China, the path to modernization was very different than that of Japan. Okay. Now foreign imperialists, both Western and the Eastern, by Eastern it is Japan. Okay. They were combined to the Western and the Eastern powers came together to weaken the government, okay, to control its government and its territories. All right. So this kind of invasion or this kind of circumstance this kind of circumstances guided the Chinese path to modernization. Okay. Warlordism, dacoities, and civil war. It was very frequent in China, and it also took it also resulted in loss of lives of hundreds and thousands of people. Okay, the invasion by Japan further ruined China, further weakened China, and also led to the decline of economy and society. Okay. In 19th and 20th centuries, the Chinese rejected traditions, their old traditions, and they searched new ways, new methods to bring about national unity and strength. Now remember this, Japan did not give away or did not completely forget about their old traditions. They retained it while they were influenced by Western ideas, but the Chinese completely rejected their old habits and customs and traditions, and they looked for new ways to unite the people of China and strengthen it. Okay. The Communist Party and its supporters struggled very hard to put an end to tradition, the old tradition, which they believed pushed the mass of the people to misery and poverty. Okay, so it professed to give power to the people by introduction of new policies. They built highly centralized state. Although they said that people would be given power to bring about their development and improvement in livelihood, but the Communist Party ended up forming a centralized state which controlled everything, all the activities in the country. But the repressive political system of the communist rule turned the ideals of liberations and equality into slogans to manipulate the people. But the government became very repressive. Okay, it controlled, subjugated the people. And the ideals of liberation and equality was not practiced. Okay. And it removed, but despite all these, these changes brought about the Communist Party and the Communist government in China, it removed the inequalities which existed in China among the people. It spread education and it also aroused national consciousness among the people. So this was the contribution of China, the Communist government in China. After the death of Mao Zedong, the Communist Party leader, the Communist Party carried out various reforms, economic reforms. Okay, they carried out market reforms, and this succeeded in making China economically independent and powerful. But the political system of the country continued to remain tightly subjugated and controlled by the communist government. Okay, the society faced growing inequalities as well as their traditions were suppressed. Okay, now it is clear that it is not clear how China can manage to develop while retaining its heritage. So what we can see in China is that it brought out many changes, many transformations to push the country towards the path of modernization. Okay, now one of the things that it did was get rid of its old traditions, try to find new ways to bring about a change in society, economy, and politics. Okay. Now, what is interesting in the case of China, unlike Japan, is to see how China continues to find a balance between its old traditions and the new ones that they adopt to bring about industrialization, to bring about economic growth and development in the country.